On this week's episode, we talk about what it's like to live in the gray area of chronic illness.
Yes, we're really going to touch on all of the things we've been feeling lately and just our whole lives dealing with chronic illness.
So stick around.
Hello, and welcome to Rare with Flair.
The podcast where two best friends with the same rare disease are living our best lives. I'm your host, Cassandra.
And I'm your host, Casey. Cass, you just got back in town from a really exciting conference.
I did. Yeah, I went to, if you heard our last episode, I went to the CSUN Assistive Technology Conference in California, in like Orange County-ish, and it was really great. I feel like I always come out learning a lot of things. I have a little cold low-key from it, but like we're good. We're kind of getting over it, but yeah, it was awesome. I just feel like I always leave with a greater appreciation for like working in the accessibility field and learning about so many different kinds of disability experiences that I may not always personally have experience with, and you know how we can make technology more accessible. But I have a hilarious blind moment that I had to share.
Oh. And you know what? You did tell me this yesterday, and no shade, I almost wish you had saved it for the pod, because I do think my initial reaction, I laughed so hard at this, you guys. So if I don't laugh as hard, it's because I've heard it. But it's so funny. And I told her, I was like, you have to tell
Well, and
this
like I told you
pod.
because like I kept forgetting to tell you after it happened, and so I didn't want to lose it, and
You didn't want to lose it.
We gotta keep track. Well, because what you were saying was like we gotta keep track of these things because otherwise we forget these stories happen at all.
Right. That's so true. Like pre-podcasting, I had so many funny stories that I think are gone now and lost in my brain, and so.
Okay, so story. I had a layover in the Dallas-Fort Worth airport, and it wasn't like a super short layover. I didn't have to run or anything, but I had to, cross terminals. If anyone has ever been there, it's a pretty big one. It's got like a little train and everything. So, I was walking, I had my cane with me, and I am heading to the escalator to go on the train to take me to a different terminal. I'm just vibing, and like I hear like the hum of the escalators, and I get there and I'm like weaving in between, and I step right on, and then I pull up my suitcase and I'm standing there and I'm like, wait. And then I turned around, and then almost to the people behind me, I said out loud, I was like, we aren't moving.
It's still funny. It's still good the second time.
I died. I thought it was so great. And I was just like, I am not carrying my suitcase all the way up there. And there was like a helpful person behind me who was like, oh, the elevator's right behind you. And I was like, oh, thank you so much.
Oh, that is so good, and such a typical blind moment. Like, such a typical moment for us.
And like, we get lulled into it. Like, I saw people heading that direction. People were still going up and carrying their suitcases, and the ones that was working was going, the opposite way. So just like every environmental cue told me that it was working, and I had no reason to believe that it wasn't working.
Yeah, no, I would have done the exact same thing, and that's so funny. I love
what
it.
a time.
But I'm glad you had a great time at your conference, and I'm really proud of you.
So much, girl.
For getting to go. It's so
How
cool.
have you been though?
I've been good. I think I announced a few episodes ago that I've been doing audio description narration, which has been so fun. And I just wrapped up a show I was doing yesterday. And I'll announce when and where it comes out when it does, I think in a few months from now. But it was really a good time. And so that was my second project, and I hope to do more. It would be great. But
girl, what a dream.
Yeah, that's my It's so fun. That's my only like really exciting update as of late. We are about to both leave to go to the Hermansky Public Syndrome Conference.
I'm so excited. It's literally next week.
Excited. I am so excited.
When this episode comes out, that's what we will be doing, is going to conference.
Yep. We will be about to leave. Yep. I'm so excited.
Oh my gosh.
So there are a lot of exciting things. April's a fun month. We have Taylor Swift's new album coming out, and life is good, you know? And yeah, I've been reading a lot. I'm obsessed with this author, Juliet Marillier. I loved her back in college. I read a few of her books and I loved them like in college. And I've just gotten on this new series that she wrote, and it is taking up my entire personality because I hyperfixate on things when I'm like, it's all I can think about. Like literally when I'm not reading it, I'm thinking about it. It's so good. It's the Blackthorn and Grimm series, and it's an adult historical fantasy. And I do say adult just because I know it's not like, you know, but we have a lot of like kids younger, so I feel like when I recommend
non-adults,
I want to just let you know.
yeah.
But anyway, but it's really, really good. And
I mean,
so yeah, that's
about your audio description though. I gotta say, I said it before, but I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you for doing such cool work. Like, it's the perfect blend of some acting skills and also accessibility, and it just, it's so cool.
And I do feel like I'm still pretty green, like, but I feel like the more I do it, I'm getting more confident with it. And so I'm kind of like taking a little more risks and, you know, trying to play around with how much emotion I'm giving and stuff.
Right.
So it's been kind of fun. And
wow.
It's been, the people I've worked with have been really nice, and it's all been going really well. So I'm really grateful.
It's so cool. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Thank you.
Girl. I can't wait for the time that we can all watch it and be like, oh my gosh, that's Casey.
I'm dreading it low key because I'm going to cringe. I know I'm going to cringe really hard.
It's so, it's terrible to hear your own voice. So
I know. And like with the pod, maybe you would think we would have gotten used to it, but it's different than
it is because it's also like, I don't know, this is more casual and
yes, you're right. This is just like how we talk as friends. That's like it's different.
Yeah, I know.
It's okay.
I hear myself when I've like rewatched like research sessions that I've like recorded, and I'm
like professionally.
Yeah,
yes,
gross.
Yes, that's what it is. That's what it is when it's like a professional setting, because this is so casual, like you said. Like it's just different. Yeah,
it is. I know it is so important to rewatch yourself, but it's terrible.
I know it is an important learning. It's a learning experience that I need to just like, you know, swallow my pride. Listen.
It's very human. It's very human, but I'm excited.
Yeah.
For more.
Yeah. Thanks.
Oh my gosh. So this episode, the title came to me before. Usually we have to sit and think of a title based on maybe some of the stuff we say in the episode.
Yes.
But when we were talking about the concept and thinking about how we wanted it to go, it reminded me of one of my other favorite episodes that we've done, was when we were talking about kind of living in that strange gray area between being sighted but also being blind. And so this is pretty much the same thing, except with a different topic, chronic illness, where we also live in that weird middle world.
Yeah, I think if somebody asked me what is your favorite episode of Rare with Flair, it would be the too blind to be sighted, too sighted to be blind. That's just a really good one. So I have high hopes, no pressure, that this episode is going to be fantastic.
It's going to be so good. It's going to be the number 2.
It's going to be great. Yeah, it's going to be tied. Hey, maybe tied for number 1.
Oh,
we don't, you know. But yeah, we do live in that gray area, not only with our vision, but with our health. And we don't touch on chronic illness as much as we could maybe on this pod.
True.
Like we definitely have touched on it, but we typically focus on like disability and of the blindness, because that just kind of really affects our daily life maybe the most. But I don't know, our health does too. So
and that I feel like I mean, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, chronic health kind of comes in waves too, especially like if you're having a flare up and things are worse for a period of time and then better and then you kind of forget about it. So just like it, I think sometimes it doesn't occupy like the same amount of brain space whereas like our vision is stable and doesn't really change.
Right. You're right. And so for those of you, if you need an overview, we both have a rare disease called Hermansky-Pudlak syndrome. It affects a lot of different areas of the body. And then, we've both had other health issues outside of Hermansky-Pudlak syndrome or issues that have come from maybe like related to HPS, but not fully like maybe a medicine we were on that made us feel weird or like, something that's like kind of HPS adjacent.
Yeah.
But, so yeah, we've both had our fair share of our medical history is very colorful.
Yeah.
Let's just say
I used those exact words like 2 days ago. I have a colorful medical history. I said to a provider.
Did?
Yeah, I did.
That's hilarious. So that's exactly the way to describe it.
So like I'll disclose for myself. So we both have a bleeding disorder. That's just part of having Hermansky-Pudlak syndrome. We've talked about it a little bit before, but we don't always. I feel like we haven't talked about chronic health in a hot minute. So
yeah, we haven't. We can do a little overview.
Right. The platelets in your blood, they help to like facilitate clotting when you get cut or there's some kind of like abrasion to your skin, maybe like a bruise or something. Anyway, so our platelets, we have plenty of them, but they're wrong. Regular platelets have these like little chemical sacs, and under an electron microscope, they kind of look like chocolate chip cookies. Ours don't have those, so they'll still like aggregate, they'll still clump together and try to clot, but because they lack that like secret sauce, they don't do it really well. And so we can have issues with like prolonged bleeding, but that I feel like that maybe isn't as much of like a chronic health condition, but it is part of our rare disease.
Yeah, the bleeding disorder is funny. It like doesn't necessarily affect your day to day, but it also can just be an extra really annoying thing. I've had to have a lot of medical procedures lately, and it's always this annoying, nagging thing of like, oh, I have to take this medication so I don't bleed during said procedure. And it's just this annoying extra thing that nobody else has to think about that doesn't have a bleeding disorder. So that's how it's been bugging me lately. I mean, besides the bruises all over my legs at all times, that and just like making sure if we cut ourselves, we're in a lot more trouble. Accidentally with a knife in the kitchen or whatever, we're in a lot more trouble than a typical
and it like
person would be.
It's kind of like setting things on hard mode because like something happens, but it gets just that much more complicated because of the bleeding disorder.
Yes, it's always there. It's this nagging, annoying thing that's like. It's not that catastrophic, but it's just annoying enough to bother.
Right. Or to like make a bad situation worse.
Worse. Yes, that's exactly what it does.
So like
it's always there. Yeah.
So like back in October, I was like putting away dishes. It was like 10 o'clock at night. I'm usually like pretty well awake then. Anyway, I was putting away my immersion blender, which is one of those blenders that's kind of like a stick and then it's got a little blade at the bottom. I cut my finger not on the blade, but on like the side of it. And it was just like this perfect storm of situations where I had like just seen my hematologist, like my bleeding disorder doctor, like the day before. And I needed a new script for like the rescue med. So like if we're bleeding a lot, we'll take this rescue med and it'll like help like stop the bleeding like pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And I didn't have any. And I was like, oh, okay. So I took a different bleeding disorder clotting med and it didn't really kick in super quickly. I did all the things I like normally need to do. So like I feel like I had like solid training. And it's like, acronym RICE of like rest, ice, compression, elevation. So I like wrapped it up super tight and I put ice on it and I put gauze on it and I was like, okay, well, let's see if it stops. And it just like didn't. So I had to take like a midnight Uber to the ER.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. And I get a text that's like, going to the ER, LOL, you know, and I'm like, oh man. And this is so like typical for our lives. Oh, well. We're always just texting each other like, oh, I'm bleeding. Whoops.
Shocked.
So I mean, it's not funny, but kind of
it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and I mean, the bleeding is not it, you know? We have a lot of other things. It's not it. And you know, I think we'll get into some of that as we go on, but do you feel like you're too healthy to be sick, too sick to be healthy? Do you feel that really describes your life?
Yeah. 100%. Because I think it is, chronic illness is like an invisible disability. Like, people will look at us and we're young and we're fit and we're like overall like trying to eat right and be healthy in our lives. But like inside, our bodies are just creating constant chaos.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the hard part of being chronically ill. One of the hard parts. We want to, I'm about to get deep, okay?
This is what this episode is for.
We want to, I actually have strong feelings about this. So this is my soapbox. We want to, as humans, feel like we have control over our health and our bodies. Sometimes when people get sick, if they get cancer or whatever it is, people want to blame what they did. Oh, they must have eaten bad. Oh, they must have whatever. And sometimes maybe things like smoking, yes, probably will inevitably lead to cancer. You know, I'm not saying environmental factors don't have a part per se, but I think as chronically ill people, I try to do everything I can. I work out nearly every day. I try to eat right. I try to meditate. Because I enjoy, those things make me feel good. I try to do that for me, just for me. But my body still completely fails on me at every turn. Not every turn, but at many turns. And it's really not, and people can look at me and say, maybe you're doing something wrong or whatever. And that's just not the case. Like, we are trying our best. And I think there are specific health issues that people blame you more. Maybe GI, for instance, of like, well, it's definitely your diet. And no, not necessarily. So anyway, that's my soapbox of like, but I feel as a chronically ill person, this pressure to like try to be as healthy as I can, because then I feel like, oh, it's my fault if something goes wrong. But that's not necessarily true. But I feel like we have to try harder to be healthy, since we're already at a disadvantage with our bodies already not being the most healthy, that we're having to like put in this extra work to just be normal. Like, you know what I mean? Does that make any sense?
No, that completely makes sense. I also think, well, and we hear that so much. So like, I've talked about this before. I have, I never remember the acronym because it sounds like a different acronym.
Inflammatory
bowel disease. Oh my gosh, thank you.
Not to be confused with irritable bowel syndrome.
I always start saying no.
I know. It's hard because it's IBS and IBD, and they're very similar letters.
Yeah, but they're different.
And they're very different.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So I, Crohn's disease, kind of like that. Colitis, inflammation of your intestines, basically. And so I've had that since 2012. So it's been a long time. I think more of my almost more of my life with it than without it.
Wow.
We're getting there. But this is so common in like chronic illness communities where people always talk about this. Like, the public loves to give opinions. They love to try and solve your problems because clearly you haven't thought of that before. And so, if this is familiar to you, you get to hear it again. But if this is unfamiliar to you, maybe it's helpful to hear from someone who's chronically ill. We don't need certain vitamins. We don't need to do yoga. We don't need to be vegans. We don't need to, have you tried whatever? Like, oh, I know someone who had that and they outgrew it.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
No.
And in your case, like your Crohn's / colitis type symptoms are literally from Hermansky-Pudlak syndrome. So you were kind of dealt that hand of cards, and you couldn't really do anything to prevent that. You were born with this disease.
Yeah.
Like, so yeah, I mean, I have like really severe chronic GERD, which is like acid reflux. So like, I don't have the Crohn's colitis. But I really don't tell people often about it because I know they're going to give me advice and they're going to say, have you done this? Have you done that? You're doing this wrong. You're doing that wrong.
Stop eating dairy.
And I've heard
gluten.
Stop eating this. Don't you think I've tried everything? I have my bed elevated. I've done everything. Yeah. And like, you know, people, they want to give advice. And I know, like, you know, we're not trying to hate. I know they're probably coming from a good place. Maybe something helped their cousin's mom back in 2004 or whatever. But it's like, you know, like that. I know they're like, they're trying to help because they think it's something you can control. And sometimes your lower esophageal sphincter just is very weak muscle and it doesn't close, and it doesn't matter what you eat. I could drink water and have reflux. Yeah. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's another rant we could go down for.
It's so funny because like we've made this joke with each other, but like together we have like one terrible GI system.
I'm the top. You're the bottom. Yeah, I don't think there's one part of us that's untouched.
I think the small bowel is the only thing that's fine.
Yeah, I'm the esophagus and the stomach. Yeah, no, please don't say it. Don't say it. Yeah, yeah, you're right. The entire, because it goes all the way from the top all the way to the bottom. It's messed up. Good thing we're not one person.
Oh gosh.
Oh god. I mean, it's a good thing.
It's great. I mean, because like chronic illness. I just. It has taken so many different forms because, you know, we've both had, speaking of, like, talking about our GI symptoms, we both had, like, when did you start having GERD symptoms?
About, like, 17.
Yeah, see, okay, we've both had GI symptoms for, like, well over a decade. And, like, it has changed so much, but one thing that hasn't changed is that somehow we just didn't have that disease anymore. We've just always had it.
Exactly. And I think the thing with being chronically ill that's fascinating too is a lot of times the treatments are just as bad as the symptom you have. And I think we both have health problems from the medications or surgeries or whatever that we have had. Yeah. And that's also like a fascinating thing people don't talk about. And even with Hermansky-Pudlak syndrome, which can often cause pulmonary fibrosis of the lungs, which pulmonary means lungs, so I don't have to say that again. But just so you all know. Even with that, you know, there is a treatment of a lung transplant, but you're kind of trading one disease for another when you get a lung transplant or a transplant of any kind. And oftentimes with any of these surgeries or treatments or medications, like, our symptoms don't go away. Like, you got your colon removed and you still have to deal with your, you know, GI symptoms.
Crazy enough, I still have Crohn's disease. So
you still have
to what you were saying about a transplant, though, for like those who may not be familiar, it sounds perfect, right? You know, you get a brand new organ, you know, new to you, used organ. But like, because it is a used organ and it wasn't part of your body originally, like, your body doesn't want something foreign in it, which generally is a good thing that your body does. But when it's something like, I don't know, a whole organ that you're getting transplanted, you want and need your body to accept it so that you can just keep on living. So you have to take like a ridiculous amount of medications, steroids, drugs that are specifically to help you suppress that, like, natural reaction in your body to not want this organ. So that's what we mean, like, trading one disease. Also, depending on the condition in which you get, like, the previous organ, you could also inherit other problems. So, like...
Yeah, it's true. Mm-hmm.
We, you know, neither of us have had solid organ transplants, but we, like Case said, like, in our community, it's really, like, it happens pretty often. And so, like, it really is trading one thing for another. You just got a new disease.
Yep. And that's how a lot of these chronic things are. With the GERD, with the Crohn's, they're forever for us. Like, and whatever treatments we pursue, the treatments will also cause us problems. Yeah. And that's something that's hard to come to terms with, of, like, even if I'm quote unquote treated for my issues, I'm never not going to have these issues. And same with you. And, you know, now we're getting, I mean, that's kind of deep, but, like, it is kind of, you kind of got to live in the moment, because if you think like that, it's kind of terrifying of, like, yeah, I don't think this is ever going away. And, you know, like, I mean, and that's not just with the GI. Right. We have a lot of health issues, like other things too.
But, like, you know, with, it's hard not to think that, though, because when you, and I don't even completely want to blame the medical teams, but, like, when I was getting my colon removed, right? I talked about that in other episodes, but, you know, I was really sick. It was kind of my only option. And, like, you know, the inflammation and the bleeding disorder, they were not friends. And you can draw other conclusions from there. But, like, so there was something about it. And, you know, I was told this isn't, like, a cure. This isn't going to fix all of your problems. But for a while, it kind of did. Especially since I was so sick for, what, like 6 months before that. And I had, like, no quality of life at all. And then suddenly, you know, I got this major surgery and I was able to function again. And it was so, you can't help yourself and, like, take any amount of improvement. And it was really significant, to be fair. But, like... Yeah. When I had a period where, like, things were significantly better, but I still had some stuff, and I was kind of willing to ignore it because I was better. And then when I started having more symptoms in Crohn's, so, like, an autoimmune disease can migrate and cause problems in other parts of your body that aren't even what the original disease was. So I started getting other issues, and that were all, like, related to Crohn's disease. And I was just like, I had a really, really difficult time processing. I'm still sick. Oh my gosh, I'm still sick.
Yes. That's something we've both dealt with, of not being able to trust our bodies. I've never trusted my body to not, like, I used to kind of be in this mindset of, like, waiting for the other shoe to drop kind of thing. Because you'll go a period of time where you're feeling really good, like you were saying. And then randomly, it could be like you wake up one day and, like, you're having another problem, or something you had that was kind of under control is a lot worse, and it's not being controlled by medication, or it's not, you know, and, like, I feel like that's hard to feel like you don't trust what's going on.
Yeah, because, you know, our immune systems aren't the greatest. And so knowing, like, something could happen, and, like, something could happen once, and then you're, like, you kind of get over it. Maybe you seek medical treatment. Maybe you get on some meds for a brief period. And you're like, but what if it happens again? Because we've had it happen before. Yeah.
And for me, you know, we were laughing about the colorful medical history. I have a lot of things that, like, doctors are scratching their heads about. Like, I've throughout my life, they've been like, we've never seen this. And then we already have Hermansky Pudlak syndrome, which is very rare. They never have heard of it. But then there will be other things where it's like, I've never seen this, or I don't know how to deal with this. And that also is an unsettling feeling, because you're just like, am I broken? Like, what is, like, what, like, what is going on in my body? You don't really know. And you're just like, I'm looking to these doctors for answers, and they don't even know enough about what's going on to help me. And that's also unsettling.
Oh, that's something else I want to talk about is I feel like doctors and how we end up viewing them. I think people who are healthy, I should say, have and like don't have rare diseases, maybe.
Yeah.
They have this view of doctors that they just know everything. And it's hard not to think that because a lot of times they do have a pretty solid answer to what's going on with you. But when you start hearing pretty regularly, wow, I've never heard of that. Wow, I've never seen that before.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think you start realizing like, oh, this is just a guy. Like, this is a really smart guy who knows a lot.
Smart guy, granted.
Right. Smart guy, has a lot of experience, has seen a lot of stuff, but he hasn't seen everything.
Yeah.
This is just a guy. And, like, you know, we've talked about this before about, like, having to be your own expert, especially having a super rare disease. Like, we have our little elevator pitch every time we go see a new doctor, and we're like, hello, welcome. This is Hermansky-Pudlak syndrome. And, like, it's always like that.
Yes, it is. You know, like, when you get a cold, you can get, like, a cortisone shot, like a steroid shot.
Oh, yeah.
You know? I think I've definitely told you this. But, like, this is just, like, a perfect example of, like, I got a steroid shot when I was, like, 14 because I was in a musical and I was really sick. And I was like, I have to sing. And so I got a steroid shot, and anyway, it like ate away my flesh. I literally have a dent in my back to this day from this.
I don't think I knew this.
Yeah, have I not? So at first we didn't know what it was. Like I thought, yes. At first we didn't know what it was, and I was like, was I bitten by like a flesh-eating spider? Like we didn't because it happened like a week after, so we didn't put it together. Then anyway, I went to the dermatologist. And, like, my dermatologist
at the time
because
this is exactly the kind of thing that would happen.
Such a Casey. Yes. My dermatologist is, like, an 85-year-old guy, okay? Serious. He has been doing this forever. And he looks at me, you know, and he's like, I've seen this one time in my like 55 years. Yeah. Yes. And I'm like, that is just a little example of the things we go through where doctors are like, I've never seen this before, ever in my life.
Or the classic, like, I've just got done Googling your disease.
I just got done Googling that. Yeah, we have that is not the only example. Yeah. We have a laundry list of weird things about our bodies that people have seen. And, you know, I do want to say, I'm kind of, okay, hear me out. We're young. We're young, and we've never really been that healthy, right?
No.
So this is kind of our lives. I feel like I'm about to spin this in a positive since we've been a little bit sad this episode. A lot of people, I've thought about this, like as they age, they will start inevitably probably having health problems, maybe, you know? And they like don't know what to do with themselves when that happens. And here we are. And I'm like, you know what? It could get worse, and it might, but also it's like we're like really are dealing with all this stuff.
Well,
and we're like prepped.
We know really well how insurance works. You ask like the average 20-something, I have no idea how insurance works. You ask the average 40-something, they probably still don't know how insurance works. But we're so used to dealing with that. Man. Yeah. Oh, man, I feel like I have so many things I want to say.
I know there's too many things, but I do feel like I get a little annoyed with people who don't understand the stuff, and I need to calm down.
Yeah. I
need to calm down, but you know what I've found lately? I've been dealing with medical stuff lately, so I've been around it a lot lately. I'm sorry, this is mean. I get really annoyed with people who are being babies about little things.
Yeah, this is why I struggled with empathy.
Yeah, I'm struggling. When people are like complaining about getting like a nose swab or something, you know, and it's like, the things we've seen, you wouldn't believe the things we've been through. And that, I know it doesn't make it any easier when you've never really been through anything medical and then you have to get your blood taken and it's like a huge deal that you have a needle in your arm or whatever. But like the needle is the bare minimum of what we have to go through. Like, are you like, if you could know some of the things we've had to go through.
No, like,
and that's why I have no tolerance. I have a hard time.
Well, this is why I had to go to therapy. So like, you know, everything that happened when I was a teen that led up to getting my my colon removed, like, really, it was very traumatic, actually. So I had PTSD, I went to therapy, and it really was extremely helpful because I had, like, I really saw so much, and I experienced, like, life and death, you know, and then people are whining because they had a sinus infection, and I just couldn't do it, man.
I know, it's hard, it's hard. And I want to be empathetic because I know that there are other problems in the, like, this is how I try to see it. There are other problems in the world that people have that we don't.
Exactly.
And if we were going through those problems, we would probably be babies about that because it would be new to us. Like, and so I really try. But when people, I think just, once again, we've said this in past episodes, read the room. Mm-hmm. Because if you're complaining to me about, like, you can complain to me. I feel like it's going to come out wrong however I try to say this because, like, I want my friends to be able to come to me about their medical problems, but I have very little patience, and I think, and a lot of people don't understand medicine either, and the way they explain things makes no sense, and then I'm frustrated. I'm like, the doctor said what? Like, and that's another thing, you know?
Yeah, I think maybe what you might be trying to say is just kind of, like, be sensitive to your audience. Like, just, like, understand where we are when you start to complain. And again, you don't have to downplay it. But I think the thing that I also thought, even before I had gone to therapy, was, like, I once saw this graphic. It got circulated around the internet a lot in, like, 2016, you know? So, like, it was, like, this wolf that had, like, 20 arrows stuck in it, and it was standing. And then there was, like, a tiny little animal standing next to it that had, like, one singular arrow stuck into it, and it was, like, falling over, nearly dead. And it said, like, pain is relative. And I was like, oh. Yeah. That's so true, is, you know, we've had to, I mean, it still affects us a lot, but, like, you know, we've had to kind of grow a thick skin because we experience this so often, and it's just part of our lives. And so, and we've also seen a lot, so, you know, we just kind of have to keep going.
And that's why I want to validate other people when they're going through a minor medical hiccup. I do. I want to. Yeah. It's hard. I mean, do you ever feel, because we look so healthy and act so healthy, do you ever feel like people, if you ever share your medical struggles, people probably think you're being dramatic because you, like, are looking so normal? Like, I almost just don't share much.
I mean, this is why I didn't talk about it when I was a teenager, when I got diagnosed. Yeah. Like, how do you talk about that with a teen? How do you talk about that with an adult, frankly? Like, no, you can't. People don't really have any concept to, even if you explain it in great detail, people have really no concept of what's going on. And it's really hard, especially when they're really healthy people, and it's really hard to connect in a way that feels meaningful to both people. But I guess all that you can really do is just try.
Yeah, and I think when you're a really healthy person, not everybody, some healthy people, maybe seeing sick people scares them. And I think some healthy people, not all, some healthy people think they're very healthy from what they're doing. Like, they think, like I was saying earlier, like, they think, I live this lifestyle and that's why I'm healthy. So they look at sick people and they say, I don't want to become that. That's not me. I'm not going to have that happen. Mm-hmm. And they know deep down that things could turn on a dime, you know? Yeah. Like, they probably know that anybody could wake up sick one day. This is a club you can join at any time. But I think that scares people. It scares people to look sickness in the eye, because if you're looking sickness in the eye, you're kind of looking death in the eye. Or if not death, at least disability, because nobody wants to be disabled.
God forbid.
Or at least, yeah, exactly. Sarcasm. But Yeah, so for anyone who didn't pick up on the sarcasm. But yeah, so I think we scare people because we're like a living reminder of some of their worst fears.
Yeah. It makes me think of like in Parks and Rec, like Rob Lowe's character, who's like this ultra healthy guy, and every time he like would get minorly sick, he would have like a crisis of self. Yes, he's so funny. My mom's also chronically ill, and we laugh so hard at his character. We think it's the funniest funny
thing.
And it really feels like funny. Healthy people personified sometimes. Like
it is. We know people like that.
Yes.
It's a characterization of it, but yeah, if you haven't seen Parks and Rec, it's a great show just in general. But Rob Lowe's character, Chris Traeger, the character is so funny.
I'm like a microchip. You can't get a speck of dust into
it. Yeah, he's like I only have 2% body fat. If I catch this like stomach virus, it's all over.
Oh my gosh, it's wild, man.
It's so funny.
Okay.
Yeah.
Question. Do you ever feel like I have an eyelash in my eye and I'm trying to get it out and I feel like my voice sounds weird. Ow.
This is the realness of the pod coming for you.
Oh my gosh.
Now.
Okay.
It's the real part.
Okay, do you ever feel like I felt like this before, but do you ever feel like being sick is like a part-time job?
It actually, I don't feel that it is. It actually is. The hours you have to spend on the phone with insurance, the pharmacy, just the doctor's office in general who won't get back to you, trying to schedule things and stuff. It really is a part-time job.
It is so much.
It is so much. And like these people at the offices, they just don't really care about you very much.
It's just a job. Like they're just doing their job.
It's their job. Like they can't care about everybody, right? I mean, that would be just very hard for them, I'm sure. But it's kind of like, this is like, it feels like life or death for you, but for them it's another day. So you're like over there like really trying to like schedule something or really trying to get results for something. Yeah. And they don't care the way you care, which makes sense because they're not you and they have a lot of people to deal with. But that's what makes it hard is like you just want, I was thinking recently, I was kind of in a low moment. I was like, I really just want someone with authority, like some doctor or something, to just take my hand and say, come here, I'm going to help you. It'll be okay. Yeah. But you often feel like you're like stuck out in the wilderness by yourself trying to like put a puzzle together that you
don't even have all the pieces to.
Yeah, you just want someone to like swoop in and pick you up and say, we're going to do this. Yeah. We've got this. And you don't often get it.
Yeah, and like we have family and friends that are there for us, but like specifically from like a medical team, sometimes that's really hard to find. I will say, like, I feel like this feels like a brag, but I've had some really actually good doctor experiences lately, which is surprising, but I want to like honor them because it's so often that we just have a terrible time and no one seems like they can help us or is interested. And, that still happens. But the first one was like my hematologist retired and I was like, it's always like panic every time a doctor retires, right? Mm-hmm. You establish a relationship with them. They know about your like disease. They've like understood your health history and now they're leaving. Excuse me. Like,
Yeah, it's very hard. That happened recently for me with one of mine.
Oh, it's brutal. But like I was just dreading it. I was already on the defensive, and this hematologist is honestly phenomenal. It was crazy because I usually go to appointments with my mom. It's helpful to have like extra eyes and ears, and we were ready with our little spiel that we were gonna give to the doctor, and the doctor comes in and he just starts telling us about Hermansky-Pudlak syndrome.
Yeah.
And we were like,
that's awesome.
Oh my gosh, he's saying everything right. Like, we were fact-checking him. Like,
yeah.
But like, it was unreal. And every appointment I'd had with him after that, I felt very valued, and he was really aware about a lot of things related to HPS. So it's just like, that was really special. And then recently I started doing some other physical therapy, and I was kind of just like having an intake appointment with the PT, and she had studied my medical history.
Yeah.
It was crazy. I was like kind of about to run through the history of my life, which usually takes a while, and I would love to have bought them coffee first, but like she was like, oh yeah, I saw this in your chart. Oh yeah, I noticed that in your chart. And then she would ask about things that she saw in my chart, and I was like, this is nuts. It's almost like you read that, which no one does.
Like you care. Yeah, that's incredible. I went to a doctor recently, and I was warned by multiple people that he had bad bedside manner, okay? So I was on the defense. Yeah. I was like, I'm going to cry. I already knew I was going to cry. And I wrote Hermansky-Pudlak syndrome down on my chart. I added no other information other than that about it. I just said Hermansky-Pudlak syndrome on like the what else should we know section or whatever, you know. And he came in, and he was trying to show me something on like a picture on the wall, and he like was accommodating my vision. He was like, how close do you need to be? Can you see this and stuff? Wow. And I'm thinking, wow, this guy either knows what HPS is or he looked it up. And that was really nice. And he was a little like, maybe not the warmest, but he was not mean at all. And I was glad that I was worried for no reason. But yeah, sometimes you do come across those doctors that actually like look things up or actually know things. One time I had a doctor in New York, and I told him I had Hermansky-Pudlak syndrome. And he said, I've never heard of that, but my wife is a dermatologist. I'm going to text her and just ask if she's heard of it. And she texted him back, yeah, albino bleeding thing.
That's amazing. That's every definition I want about
That's HPS. It. That's the definition. Albino bleeding thing. That's the definition. That's it. But I thought that was funny. So, yeah, that's some really people know it. Some people don't.
Wow.
Yeah. How do you feel like your mental health? I mean, you just said you've been to therapy and everything. For me, like, I think this might be controversial, or this, I don't know what I'm about to say is just my personal opinion. Yeah. I've been in bad mental health places before, and personally, I would actually rather be in bad physical health than bad mental health, because those times have been harder for me even. But I do think they go hand in hand. If you're in bad mental health, you might be in bad physical. If you're in bad physical, you might be in bad mental. And it's important to try to do everything in your control. Of course, we're not in control of it fully. But yeah, like I do feel like when I'm in bad physical health, I try to keep my mental health like afloat. And I do feel like because we're so used to our bodies just like falling apart at random, we try, but I don't know. Like, how do you feel about that?
I often feel that my mental health and physical health are linked. And like, I think if you're in a bad mental space, you can end up having also physical health problems. But I feel like most of my mental health problems are as a result of being in a bad physical health. And it truly compounds everything. Like, I was going through like a difficult medical season back in like 2018, and it honestly, like, for what it wasn't like, it wasn't good. It was bad, but it was made incredibly difficult because I was in a really bad mental health space, and I just like, it's so hard to get out of that. And you know, you need to take care of yourself, and your body needs so much more from you, especially when it's sick. And it's harder to do that when you are, you know, trying to just wake up in the morning. Like, I just it's hard.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I have a lot of health anxiety, and I've been to therapy too, and a lot of times my therapy does revolve around my health. It's a big player in the meetings, you know. And I had a therapist once that was like, yeah, like, you do have health anxiety, but you're not like a hypochondriac, because you're at what you're going through. Like, this is happening. This is happening. Like,
doctors can really validate that this is going on, you know.
And I think like my anxiety comes from the unknown of the unexpected happening and the next shoe dropping, that kind of thing that we were talking about. And just never really knowing like when that's going to happen. And I feel like I'm a very high maintenance person because of my health. Like I have a lot of little things about my health that aren't necessarily like deal breakers for my life, but like they make me high maintenance. Like, hey, if I don't eat in 5 minutes, I might pass out. Or like, hey, I'm going to wheeze if we walk too far. Or like, hey, I need to go to the bathroom like right now. Like I'm annoying when I'm like, especially when I'm like traveling with people. Yeah. Like my mom and I were like best friends, so this didn't offend me, but I recently went on a trip with one of my friends and like multiple health things happened. And my mom was like, how does she even deal with you? Like she was joking. Like we were laughing. Like I thought it was funny. And I do think it's funny, but it's like, yeah, how do people even want to travel with me? Because every 5 minutes there's like something going on. I'm like, yeah. But anyway, yeah. I do. It makes you feel annoying. Like it feels so high maintenance.
I was talking about this with another friend who was talking about chronic health stuff recently. And it's just like, you don't. Like, you need to take care of yourself. You know you need to take care of yourself. Like, I need to drink water. I need to, like, for me, I need to be especially well hydrated, too. So it's just like, I really need to, like, hydrate right now. But I don't want to be, a bummer if we're not in a place where that's really easily done. And I don't want to have to, like, you know, break up the group in order to take care of my needs. So I'm just going to kind of, like, force myself through it.
Hope we don't die. And like... We were talking about that yesterday. Yeah, go on. No. I think you're going to say what I was...
No, go ahead.
We were talking about yesterday of, like, when do you bring it up? Like, it's like, if you have a really, like, let's say, like, my chronic pain is, like, really bad that day. Am I just going to say, I'm really in pain and be, like, a downer? Like, probably not. I'll probably just smile and hide it and no one will ever know. But, like, that's something else, too. Like, when do you say... I think we only say it's a problem when it's, like, really becoming a problem. Like, oh, I'm about to pass out, actually, right now. Yeah, so, like...
we need to stop what we're doing immediately!
Yeah. There was, like, a hilarious Instagram reel I saw of, like, a girl who was, like, in anaphylaxis. I mean, it was a skit. She wasn't actually. She was, like, in anaphylaxis. She's like, hey, like... Maybe I need to go to the hospital. Like, maybe not. Like, it's okay. Like, no worries if not. Like, but, like, maybe I need to go to the hospital. And, like, her friends were like, what? Like, are you okay? She's like, if you're able. It's okay if you can't drive me to the hospital. But, like, if you're able, like, I can't breathe. Like, I reposted it because I was like, this is actually me. Like, I might sound like I talk about my health a lot, but people have no idea how often I actually am, like, not talking about it and like trying to like
oh my god
scrape by. It's so funny.
I think that's wow. I love that. I also think like on the other hand, I've also talked to other chronically ill people that like we don't notice every little symptom because that would make us crazy.
Yes.
Whenever something new comes up, we're like, huh, that's weird. But sometimes it's not that big of a deal. We're like, is this just like a normal people problem or is this a chronic ill problem? And like...
Yeah, that's what gets me.
It's so random because you're like, I don't have a great concept on like what's normal. And
yes, and because our history, like, you know, something that's normal on somebody else, on us, it would be that 1 in a million rare thing because that's what we've had happen.
Yeah.
So that's why it's like, oh, it's probably nothing. But for us, like, our history has told us that it usually is not nothing. That's what's so scary.
Yeah.
Like,
but sometimes, sometimes it's just like,
sometimes it is nothing.
Like, you're like, you know enough about your body. Like, obviously, you don't fully know your body. No one does, but especially us. She's a mystery. Yeah. But, like, I remember, I just feel like we were talking about this, and I unlocked a memory. Kind of on the other token, where, like, I was, like, just starting college, and I was in a group of people that, for some kind of, like, freshman bonding activity, we did like a high ropes course and it was super fun. And I had recently had surgery, so I was like just still getting like back into like my strength and being healthy, and it felt so good to do something like really physical.
Yeah.
And I was wearing like sneakers with like ankle socks, so they were, you know, kind of under the like the little hem of the sock was at the same length as the top of the sneaker. Anyway, I ended up on like one of the wire rope things. I guess I cut my ankle. I didn't notice. And bleeding disorder. I like it kind of just bled into my shoe, and I didn't even realize it. It wasn't that big. And with the bleeding disorder, like sometimes things look significantly worse than they actually are. But most of it, like by the time it was noticed, so people started pointing it out to me because I didn't know, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, your ankle's bleeding," and I was like, and I looked down and it was mostly dried, and I was like, "Nah, it's okay." And I just kept doing high ropes, and I think people were like, "Okay."
Yeah, that's how I often am with the bleeding disorder. I'm trying to be better.
Yeah.
Like, you even yell at me sometimes.
Case doesn't have the right meds in her house.
I don't. And I just, a lot of times if I'm bleeding, I'm like, well, hopefully it's fine.
Case needs the right meds in her house.
I do. I actually do have them now because of you. I do. I have 3 different bleeding meds in this house. I do.
Yeah. Okay. I reject that. Case didn't have the right meds in her house. I didn't. But now she does. I didn't.
And thanks to you. And that's, once again, like, why our friendship, I mean, we just did a whole hour last episode about why our friendship matters. But, like, truly, the chronic health stuff, I mean, it's very hard to talk about this with healthy people. Yeah. It really is. And they try. Oh, yeah. They try their best.
And, like, we don't have the same issues. Like we just said earlier.
No, we don't.
We have I don't think we have, like, one chronic health
bleeding
issue.
And blind.
Yeah. That's it. Everything else is different. It's wild that, like, we can still connect because we live in that chronic illness world that few people really understand. And, you know, the added complexity of having to constantly define your rare disease or spell it to every doctor you meet.
Yes. And I think when we've met other chronically ill people who don't have our same rare disease at all, we've still been able... You kind of feel immediately like you can kind of talk about that stuff with no walls up. You can kind of get right into it and that's like talk about it.
To our friendship episode from last week, I guess, from last time. So we, you know, I said that when we first met, we were in a shuttle and we just started talking about specifically health problems, and that I feel like. I don't know, you get such an immediate kinship, in my opinion.
You do.
And I feel like that's how I was like, oh yeah, these are like really great people, just because we could bond over the difficulties of having, again, a variety of chronic illnesses, but that's just how it is. I also think...
It takes you to that deep level fast.
Oh yeah. You just skip so many, like, icebreaker steps that sometimes you have to go back and do. You're like, by the way, like, where do you live? Like...
Right, yeah. So this is my traumatic history, but also, like, what's your last name?
Yeah.
But wait, what were you saying? You were saying something else.
I was gonna say, like, what you just said earlier, though, we are good influences on each other.
Yeah, we are.
With our health and, like, taking care of our bodies in a way that we can manage. Like, part of why I was encouraging Casey to get, like, all of the meds in her house was because I have a really good hematologist, and every time I have an appointment, I feel like I come out with so many, like, interesting tidbits and facts that we didn't even know about our rare disease, that I send Casey, like, 10-minute memos about those appointments.
Yeah. And, like, you know, despite what I was saying at the beginning of the episode about, like, your health is not always in your control, like, I have chronic pain, and, like, I do feel like working out every day, it doesn't, like, cure it, but it definitely helps, and it can, you know, we've encouraged each other to work out, and I think that's good for, like, your heart, your lungs, and so many, your mental health, too.
Oh, yeah.
And, like, we do encourage each other to just, like, do what we can, but not to put too much pressure on ourselves. And if something goes wrong, it's easy to blame yourself and think, I'm doing something wrong. Like, why? I'm trying so hard to be healthy. Like, why am I not healthy? And it's like, well, we don't even know enough about our rare disease, really, to even say what's caused by what. Like, some of my stuff could be completely unrelated, but we also don't know that much about Hermansky-Pudlak syndrome, and specifically type 3 or any of the types, like, what's different about each type, or because our body, like, if your body is diseased, even if it's affecting only one part, your whole body's connected, and it really affects everything. And so, like, who's to say a lot of our stuff is not just because we were born with a diseased body?
Yeah.
Like, you know, you really don't know, but yeah.
I feel like, you know, lately, you know, you've kind of been dealing with a lot of health stuff, honestly, for a handful of months. And I feel like this year, personally, like, my body has been a little bit more touch and go than it has been in previous years, which is just...
Yeah.
It is a little bit deflating. It's, you know, I've had health issues this entire time, but when it improves, it feels nice. And then when you get sick again or you have a flare up, you're like, oh yeah, this again.
Well, just like literally 2023, like I've been having some issues since like November of last year, but before November, I had a really good health streak for me. Like, I was like doing great actually, because I was like, had gotten all my meds right. I was like feeling good. And so, I mean, it's very up and down. Like, you go through phases, and that's just how it is. And it's hard when you're going through a bad phase to feel like you want to, like, put your life on hold.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I'm kind of like, well, I mean, I was just telling you right before this call, I was like, well, like, I'm mainly focused on my health right now. Like, I can't really focus on a lot of other things because it is, like, a part-time job. Yeah. And so, like, and then you want to be like, when I'm better, I'll do this. But you might not have a, you know, I don't know. It depends on when better comes, because it's chronic.
Or what better even means for you and your body.
For you. Right.
Because, like, we're never really going to be cured. You know, even if they find a cure for our genetic disease, we're probably still going to have chronic health problems because we've already had them almost for most of our lives, actually.
Yeah.
So, like,
our bodies are already like,
it's a little too late in that regard, I think. But, like, but it's hard. And I think, you know, we should celebrate the wins. Like, when we do something nice for our body, we're still doing something nice for our body. We should just, I think we should just take that for what it is. And, you know, I think it's important to still, like we've talked about before, finding community. Like, we have each other. Yeah. We also have our broader community with our rare disease, and we're going to see them so soon.
So soon. And I agree. And I think I practice gratitude all the time. I think that's very important, to just really be aware of, like, all the little things that you have every day. And I really do often thank God for, like, the health I do have. Yeah. Like, we are, you know, in comparison to some people, we are very healthy depending on who you're comparing us to.
True.
Like, we're able to pretty much function and, like, live a life. And we have to stop sometimes and, you know, do some things or whatever. But I do think, like, I'm really grateful for the health that I do have. Yeah. I'm grateful to be able to wake up and exercise in the morning and move my body. And so, like, I think it's important to also look at that perspective.
And what you do have in this moment right now, because, like, there have been times where we haven't been able to exercise because we've been so sick. Yeah. And now, you know, I think even as a reminder for us, when we're in kind of a healthier place and then start having more flare-ups and issues again, to remember that, like, hey, we've had health and we've had sickness, and so we just kind of have to take it as it comes. Sometimes I, like, low-key play, like, a little game of bingo, and I think of all of the things in my body that don't have something wrong with it. And, you know, there are other parts of my body that don't have something wrong with them. And that is nice.
That's true. One of my friend's moms the other day, my friend was telling her about something in my health, you know, asking for prayers or whatever. And her mom was like, does Casey have something going on with every part of her body? And my friend was like, yeah.
Oh, no.
No, not every part. Not every part. It is kind of hard. I've played that game too, though, and it honestly, I could think of things for a lot of parts of my body.
No, same. I know. And then, like, sometimes if...
So it is kind of hard. It's like, well, my toes... Well, actually, no, I do have a toe problem. I literally wear shoe inserts.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
well, like,
it's fine.
I know. Well, and it's hard because, like, you also don't want to do that too much because if something does start to go wrong,
I know.
then
don't
you're
say
like,
it, don't say
what
it.
do I hold on to? You know, so.
I know. Sometimes going to the NIH, though, and doing a full workup can make you feel a little healthier.
It kind of can,
are. Because they're like, overall, your blood work looks pretty good. My blood pressure is incredible. Like,
Me
too! We can count incredible, like, perfection every time. We can count our wins.
Oh, yeah.
Our cholesterol's awful, though. We both have terrible cholesterol.
Yeah. We both have really high, like, good cholesterol. Yeah.
It's the good cholesterol, which, like, the fact that we do, I'm like, is that HBS?
I know,
even though
right?
Like, not everything is. But I'm like, that's just weird. Like,
it's a little uncanny.
But I can hear the people now. I like shouldn't have even said we have high cholesterol because I can hear the people now being like, your diet like, must be terrible. Listen, it's the good cholesterol.
We're fine.
Don't come at me. Don't do it.
I know.
I'm ready to strike.
Yeah.
I'm on edge and I'm ready to strike. Don't come at me. Don't.
I know. And like, I don't know. Bodies are weird. And sometimes
bodies are weird. Yeah.
sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not. And I think that's just kind of always how it's going to be. So celebrate your good wins and
yes.
And then thank your body and thank God for something that your body can do today that it couldn't do previously. Even if it might not be able to do that tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. Because any of us can join this club tomorrow.
Yeah.
We could get healthier. Other people could get sicker. We don't know. Like, we don't know.
And, like, pretty much everyone will acquire a disability in their lives. Even if it's just from old age. Like, it's just gonna happen. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Bodies are imperfect.
Yeah, but, you know, we're going to count our wins and we're going to lean on each other in our community because it's so important if you're chronically ill to find even a person with a different chronic illness than you to just commiserate about the medical field, which is crazy. But yeah.
That's our app. Wow.
That's our app. Sorry if it was sad, Mom, because I know our moms are like both crying. We love you both. My mom will sometimes be like, that episode made me sad.
Well, your mom, I hope, you know, like, I think our moms also both have chronic health problems. And so I think to an extent, they'll probably be able to relate.
Yeah.
So maybe, but yeah, love you, moms.
Anyway. Yeah, love y'all. But no, thank you so much for listening. And we're so excited to update you on the HPS conference when we return. Oh my goodness.
I cannot wait. We're going to see each other again.
I'm so excited. Oh my gosh.
I can't wait.
So, thank you for listening.
We'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye.